I'm Kimberly Harris. I turned 30 last fall, and for most of my life, I truly believe that family came before everything, even when it hurt, even when I had to shrink myself to keep the peace. But that Monday morning, I opened Instagram while waiting for coffee at work, and there they were, my parents and my sister standing on a cliff in Santorini, arms around each other with matching sunglasses and bright smiles. The caption read, "Nothing but real family on this journey." 10 minutes later, I checked my bank app and saw the withdrawals one by one, over $10,000 gone. Before I go any further, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to rebuild after someone close broke your trust. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My dad worked for a mid-size accounting firm downtown, and my mom taught third grade at the elementary school just 2 blocks from our house. We lived in a simple 4-bedroom home, just big enough to feel comfortable but never flashy. It had a fenced-in backyard where we grilled in the summer and strung up Christmas lights every December. My sister Jessica is 2 years older than me. Growing up, we were close in the way kids are when they don't know any better, riding bikes through the neighborhood, arguing over cereal boxes, falling asleep, watching old movies on VHS. My dad believed in teaching us how money worked. Every month, he'd sit us down and go over the family budget. Credit cards were for emergencies only. Save before you spend. And above all, always keep an emergency fund. Life doesn't always warn you, he'd say. I took it seriously, maybe more seriously than anyone else in the family. By the time I finished college, Michigan State marketing degree, I already had a color-coded spreadsheet for everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, even a future travel line I rarely touched. I moved to Chicago, got hired at a mid-tier digital marketing agency, and started putting away 20% of every paycheck. My goal was simple peace of mind. Jessica was different. She was always the one who got a pass. She floated through jobs, changed majors 3 times before dropping out, and still somehow ended up back at home with Mom and Dad. When she was short on rent, they covered it. When she wanted to take a week off work for a retreat or a trip, there was always a reason it was good for her growth. I once asked for help during a rough patch when my car needed repairs and my student loan bill hit the same week. My dad's answer, "You chose that path, Kimberly. You figure it out." It stung, but I kept my head down. I visited once a month, called on birthdays, sent Mother's Day cards, and always brought thoughtful gifts at Christmas. Jessica never remembered mine. Things hit a low point a few years ago when she asked me to be in her wedding destination, bachelorette in Miami, custom dresses spa weekend. The whole thing would have cost me nearly $3,000. I told her gently that I couldn't swing it. She said, "If you really cared about me, you'd find a way." Our parents agreed. I still showed up to the wedding, not as a bridesmaid, just a guest, seated near the back, 2 rows from the catering table. And then came the little things. Charges on my credit card I didn't recognize. Jessica borrowing it for gifts one Christmas without asking. My mom brushed it off as normal sibling stuff. Even when someone tried to reset my bank login earlier that year, and the bank flagged it as suspicious, my dad told me I was being paranoid. Still, I never imagined what I'd see that morning. There they were, my mom with a new handbag, the one she'd shown me over FaceTime a few weeks earlier. Jessica in a sundress I'd never seen standing beside my dad, who looked freshly tanned and relaxed. The caption read, "Surprise family vacation finally happening. Nothing but real family on this journey." And just like that, the truth began to unfold. I set my coffee down and just stared at the screen. At first, I thought maybe it was a memory post, something from years ago that I'd forgotten. But then I noticed the timestamp uploaded just a few hours earlier and the geotag confirming Santorini. My mom was wearing the exact handbag she'd shown me over FaceTime last month, the one she said she could never justify buying. Jessica's dress was new too, and my dad had that clean-cut vacation haircut he always got before big events. I called Jessica first, straight to voicemail. I tried again and then moved on to my parents. Nothing. Just rings and silence. Back at my desk, I opened their social media pages. My sister had posted video clips, business class, plane seats, a view from an infinity pool, a sunset yacht tour. Their smiles were all over every frame. Something in my stomach dropped. I opened my banking app. My checking account looked fine, so did my regular savings. But when I clicked into the emergency fund I'd built over 5 years, the balance was just under $9,000. Last week, it had been over 10. I pulled up the transaction history. That's when the full picture came into view. $3,200 to Olympic Airlines, $400 to a resort in Santorini, $795 to a tour company. My hands were trembling. I flagged each transaction, took screenshots, and forwarded them to my personal email. The numbers didn't lie. They hadn't just excluded me from the vacation, they'd used my money to pay for it. Tyler from the next desk rolled his chair over when he noticed my face. "Everything all right?" he asked. "My family." I couldn't quite get it out. "They took my emergency fund, over $10,000, for a vacation to Greece." His eyebrows raised. "Kim, that's theft. I left work early that day. My boss, Michael, didn't ask questions. He just told me to take care of myself." Rachel met me at my apartment that evening. We sat on the couch while I tried to make sense of the photos, the withdrawals, and the silence from my family. At one point, my phone buzzed again, another charge pending. This time, it was for $850 from a luxury transport service in Athens. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. Rachel sat on the floor with me afterward, rubbing my back while I cried. "You need to call the bank," she said, "and maybe even the police." I nodded. I wasn't ready for that part yet, but I knew she was right. The next 2 days were a blur. I called and texted every family member multiple times, left voicemails. No one replied. Meanwhile, they kept posting. My mom with plates of seafood and wine, my dad giving a thumbs up from the deck of a boat, Jessica posing in front of ancient ruins with hashtags like #FamilyFirst and #MakingMemories. I couldn't eat, could barely sleep. I opened the same 3 apps over and over: Instagram, my bank, and my email, waiting for something to shift. On Wednesday night, I finally got a text. It was from Jessica. My heart jumped. It read, "He won't notice. His account's barely active anyway. Dad says book the extra excursion." At first, I thought maybe she meant someone else, but then I realized she meant me. She'd sent it to the wrong person. I stared at the screen until the little dots appeared, then disappeared. No follow-up. That was it. That was the confirmation. I called the bank first thing Thursday morning and asked to speak with a fraud specialist. The woman on the line, her name was Sarah, listened carefully while I explained everything. I told her about the transactions, the screenshots, the text message, the prior incidents. She asked if I'd given anyone my password. "No," I said. "But my sister used my credit card once without asking, and a few months ago someone tried to change my banking password over the phone." Sarah placed an official fraud alert on my account. She told me the charges would be flagged, which meant the vendors wouldn't get paid until the investigation was complete. That would likely impact my family's ability to make more purchases or even check out of the hotel. She also said they'd issue new account numbers and freeze all current access. Before we ended the call, she said, "I know this is hard, but I strongly recommend filing a police report. It'll help if we need to escalate things." I thanked her, then spent the rest of the day locking everything down. I changed every password-enabled 2-factor verification and removed all saved payment info from my apps. I canceled recurring charges for anything that wasn't necessary. That night, I left my phone on Do Not Disturb. Only Rachel and Michael were allowed through. I finally fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 6:08 the next morning, the storm hit. My phone buzzed hard against the nightstand. Call after call. My mom, then my dad, then Jessica, then all over again. By the time I sat up, I had 26 missed calls. My hands were shaking. I opened my voicemail. First message was my mother, frantic. "Kimberly Ann Harris, what did you do?" "The hotel says our payment was declined. Your father is trying to talk to the manager. This is ridiculous. Call me right now." The next was my dad. "Whatever this is, it ends now. You're embarrassing the family. Fix this immediately or there will be consequences." Each message got more urgent. My dad's tone shifted from stern to threatening. My mom was crying in one, angry in the next. Jessica texted the family group chat. She figured it out. "Kim's doing this." My dad followed up. "Fix this. Now. Your mother is crying in the lobby." Jessica again. "Your little revenge stunt. Not cute. You've always been jealous." I turned off notifications. Rachel came over with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. I played her the voicemails. She listened calm as ever. "They're panicking," she said. "But you did the right thing. Don't answer. Not yet." I messaged my boss. Told him I needed a personal day. He replied, "Take whatever time you need." That afternoon, I booked an emergency session with Dr. Eleanor, a therapist I'd seen years earlier after a bad breakup. She squeezed me in the next day. "Maintain your boundaries," she said. "You're having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation." By evening, the messages had changed again. The tone shifted from fury to bargaining. "We'll pay you back when we get home." It was meant to be a surprise. Jessica didn't mean to hurt you with that caption. My sister still wasn't apologizing, just calling me dramatic. "It's just money. Families share things." I forwarded the nastiest messages to my email just in case. Then I muted every thread. That night, Rachel stayed over again. We ordered takeout, watched sitcom reruns, and didn't talk about Greece. As I was falling asleep, I opened my bank app one more time. The fraud alert was in place. My new cards were processing. My savings were frozen for investigation. Whatever came next, there was no going back. I didn't respond that night. Not to the calls, the texts, or the guilt-laced voice messages. I left my phone charging in the kitchen and spent the evening sitting on the living room floor with Rachel eating noodles out of takeout boxes and watching some old sitcom she said would make me laugh. I don't remember much of the episode, just the quiet clink of plastic forks and the sound of my neighbor's dog barking through the wall. The next morning, I woke up early. For the first time all week, I wasn't shaking. My phone screen was filled with notifications. Again, group chats, missed calls, even a few emails from my mother. The subject line on one just said, "We need to talk before this goes any further." I opened the banking app first. The fraud case was officially in progress. There were notes on the disputed charges and alerts for any new activity. My accounts were still locked down. That afternoon, I sat across from Dr. Eleanor in a softly lit office filled with muted earth tones and a small fountain near the window. She listened without interruption while I laid out everything: how the money disappeared, the Instagram photos, the messages afterward. When I paused, she asked gently, "What's been the hardest part so far?" I sat with the question a moment, then said, "It's not just the money. It's realizing they could do this and still sleep at night." She nodded, jotting something down. "Let's focus on what's in your control now. Boundaries, safety, what support looks like moving forward." After the session, I felt a little steadier. Rachel picked me up from the building and we walked to the bakery down the block for coffee. She didn't ask how it went, just handed me a blueberry muffin and let me be quiet. Over the next few days, the tone of my family's messages shifted again. My mom sent a voice recording where she sounded tearful, talking about how hard it was being in a foreign country without backup credit cards. My dad followed with a text that read, "We borrowed money from another couple at the resort. This is humiliating, Kimberly." Jessica's posts on Instagram hadn't stopped. One story showed her sipping wine from a rooftop bar with the caption, "Overcoming Unexpected Challenges with Grace." The image showed the same hotel balcony from the earlier videos. I stayed quiet. Rachel started spending the night more often. She brought snacks and movies, sometimes a stack of clean laundry she'd folded at her place when I forgot mine in the washer. At one point she said, "You don't have to go through this alone." "Okay." I nodded. By the end of the week, I'd stopped checking their profiles. I didn't need to see the latest update from Greece to know how they were doing. I already knew. Then 5 days after I discovered the theft, a new text arrived, this one from my dad. "Landing at O'Hare, 3:15 p.m. tomorrow. Be at the house by 6:00. We need to talk." It wasn't a question. There was no apology or acknowledgement, just an order. I showed Rachel the message. She didn't say anything at first, just tapped her finger on the screen once like she was underlining it. "Don't go alone," she said. I thought about it all night. After a long phone call with Dr. Eleanor and another with Rachel, I replied, "I'm not coming to the house. If you want to talk, we can meet at Rachel's place at 7. I'll text you the address." The response came quickly. "This is a family matter, no outsiders." I didn't wait this time. "Rachel stays or there's no meeting. That's my boundary." A full hour passed before another reply. "Fine. 7:00 p.m. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. I printed every piece of evidence, bank records, screenshots of social media posts, even Jessica's mistaken text about the excursion. I arranged them in a simple folder in the order they happened. Rachel cleaned her apartment top to bottom. She set a pitcher of water on the coffee table, laid out coasters, and made sure there were enough seats for everyone. Dr. Eleanor helped me rehearse possible responses, how to stay grounded when they got defensive or dismissive. At 7:02 p.m., the doorbell rang. Rachel squeezed my hand once, then went to open it. I stayed seated on the couch, feet flat on the floor folder on my lap. They came in as a group, my parents first, then Jessica. My mom's face was blotchy, her mascara lightly smudged. My dad looked stiff and tight-jawed. Jessica stayed a few steps behind them, her chin lifted, arms crossed. My mom reached toward me for a hug. "Kimberly?" I didn't move. "Please have a seat," I said, gesturing toward the sofa across from me. They hesitated. My dad looked over at Rachel. "Is this really necessary?" he asked. "Having an audience for private matters?" "She's here because I trust her," I said. They sat. My dad next to my mom. Jessica took the armchair. "You've put us in a very difficult position," my father started. "We had to borrow money, rearranged flights. This has been humiliating." I didn't say anything at first. I opened the folder. "Let's be clear. You accessed my account without permission. You took over $10,000. You used it for a vacation you didn't even tell me about and then got angry when I protected myself." "It wasn't theft," my mom said quickly. "We were going to pay you back." "Then why not ask?" I said. "We knew you'd say no." Jessica muttered, rolling her eyes. I looked at her. "So you took it anyway." My father leaned forward. "Things got out of hand, but filing a fraud report created a mess. Your mother had to pull from her retirement account. I didn't file a false report," I said calmly. "I filed an accurate one. And here's the evidence." For the next 15 minutes, I walked them through each charge, each post, each message. When I reached the part about Jessica's text, she shrugged. "You never change your passwords. It's not my fault you made it so easy." Rachel gave a small shake of her head, but said nothing. I finally looked at my mom. Why exclude me? Why go without telling me and then use my money? My mom hesitated. It wasn't supposed to be like that. The trip was Jessica's idea, just for the three of us. I waited. We looked at the costs and, well, we thought you wouldn't mind helping. You never go anywhere. I nodded slowly. Then I said, and the caption, "Nothing but real family." She flushed. "That wasn't meant the way it sounded." Jessica cut in. "You always make things dramatic. It was a trip. We wanted to enjoy ourselves. You act like you're some victim." I didn't answer that. Instead, I said, "This wasn't about the money. This was about trust and boundaries." My father's voice got sharper. "Until you drop this, consider yourself no longer part of this family." He stood. My mom followed. Jessica looked pleased. I didn't move. I just said, "I'm sorry you see it that way." They left. Rachel didn't say anything for a while after the door closed. Then she asked, "You all right?" I nodded. Not because I felt okay, but because for the first time everything was out in the open. Rachel stayed a little longer after they left. We didn't talk much, just sat there letting the quiet settle around us. I remember she cleared the glasses from the table, rinsed them in the sink, and asked if I wanted tea. I said no. I just needed to sit. That night, I didn't cry. I lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, and thought about how fast things had shifted. One moment I was checking my budget and planning my next grocery run. The next I was filing a fraud claim against the people who raised me. The messages didn't stop after that meeting. If anything, they escalated. My dad sent a string of emails demanding I drop the report. My mom left voicemails about how I'd turned my back on the people who gave me everything. Jessica posted cryptic stories on social media, quotes about betrayal and family loyalty. One post showed a family dinner with the caption, "Some people choose money over love. Not us." I stopped replying. If it wasn't a direct question, I didn't answer. Dr. Eleanor called that detached engagement. It gave me space without completely cutting them off. The bank investigation dragged on, but Sarah, my fraud specialist, called regularly with updates. One Friday morning, she told me they'd managed to recover about 60% of the funds so far. The rest, she said, might require further action. "Are you considering legal help?" she asked. "I've started looking," I told her. That same week, I met with an attorney named Jennifer. She specialized in financial crimes and came highly recommended. We sat in a quiet corner of her office while I laid out everything: documents, screenshots, the text from Jessica. She listened carefully and then walked me through the options. "You have enough for criminal charges," she said. "But that path isn't easy. It could involve court appearances, press even jail time depending on how it plays out. The alternative is civil action, less public, more focused on recovering funds." I told her I needed time. She nodded. "Whatever you choose," she said, "you've already done the hardest part. You drew the line." Back at work, Michael called me into his office for a check-in. I thought he was going to ask about deadlines or project updates. Instead, he offered something else. "We're creating a new position," he said, "handling incoming client accounts. It comes with a salary bump and a seat at strategy meetings. I think you'd be great for it." I didn't say anything at first. "You've had a rough few months," he added, "but the way you've handled it, that's the kind of judgment we need in leadership." 3 weeks later, I accepted the promotion. It helped. Not just financially, but emotionally too. I started rebuilding my emergency fund, a little each paycheck just like before. This time, I set up stricter account protections. I got a new bank, a new set of security questions. Everything was behind two-factor authentication. Some people fell away during that time, friends who didn't want to be in the middle. Others believed the version of the story my mother told, how I'd lashed out over a misunderstanding. But others showed up in quiet, steady ways. Tyler from work invited me to a financial wellness group that met once a month. Paula from down the hall introduced me to her book club. Rachel's parents started including me in their Sunday dinners. Her mom always made an extra plate. Her dad always asked if my car needed anything. 2 months after the meeting at Rachel's, I moved. A smaller place in a quieter neighborhood. It cost a little less and had fewer memories. I painted the bedroom a soft green and bought a new set of dishes. Rachel and Tyler helped me move. We ordered pizza that night and ate it on the floor. To new beginnings, Rachel said, holding up her drink. Boundaries and better days, I said. The holidays came fast after that. Thanksgiving had always been at my parents' house, Christmas Eve at Jessica's. I thought about skipping everything, but Dr. Eleanor suggested something different. You don't have to erase the holidays, she said. Just give them a new meaning. Rachel invited me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner. I said yes. Her mom made stuffing from scratch, and her younger brother told corny jokes the whole time. For the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend I was okay around the dinner table. Christmas was harder, but I planned ahead. I invited a few people, Rachel, Tyler, Paula, to my apartment for a simple meal. Everyone brought something. We played board games, listened to old music. It wasn't fancy, but it felt real. Just before New Year's, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, Arizona postmark. It was from my grandmother, my dad's mother. We hadn't spoken much in years. Kimberly, she wrote, I've heard 2 very different stories about what happened this year. But I've known you since the day you were born. You were always careful, always kind. I trust your heart. My door is open to you no matter what anyone else says. Inside was a check for $500, a small note attached for your emergency fund. Everyone deserves security. I sat on the couch holding it for a long time. That night I called her. We talked for half an hour, careful not to mention too much about my parents, but it was a beginning. 6 months after that first Instagram post, most of the money had been recovered. Jennifer sent a letter to my parents requesting the remaining amount. A few weeks later, I received a cashier's check in the mail. No note, no return address, just the amount owed. During those months, I started doing things differently. I joined a cooking class, something I'd put off for years. Tyler talked me into it. That's where I met Andrew. He was patient, kind. He never pushed. When I finally told him about my family, he said, everyone has something. I'm here to know you, not judge them. By the end of spring, we were seeing each other regularly. Then out of the blue, Jessica texted, Can we talk? Just us? I called Dr. Eleanor. We talked through it. Then I said yes. We met at a small coffee shop near the park. She looked different, tired maybe, less polished than usual. I've been seeing someone, she said. A therapist. I've got issues. Entitlement. Impulse stuff. She didn't say sorry right away, but she got there. The Greece trip. I knew it was wrong, she said. I convinced myself you wouldn't miss the money, that we deserved something for once. But it wasn't about that. She paused. I was jealous of how you live, how you built something on your own. We talked for 2 hours. About growing up, about how we were raised to compete instead of connect. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. As I walked home afterward, I noticed the trees along the sidewalk had started to bud. Spring was coming. Andrew and I were leaving the grocery store when I got the second text from Jessica. This one was shorter than the first. Just a single sentence. I told Mom you talked to me. She's still not ready. I didn't reply. Not right away. I slipped my phone into my jacket pocket and helped Andrew load the bags into the back seat. On the drive home, he didn't ask what it was about, just reached over and turned down the volume on the radio when it got too loud. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and reread our coffee shop conversation in my mind. Jessica had been nervous. Her voice trembled a little when she first sat down, but she never looked away when she said she knew she'd crossed a line. It was wrong, she told me, and I think I knew it even before we booked the tickets. It had taken her 7 months to say it out loud. After that day, she started reaching out more, a message every couple weeks. Sometimes it was just a link to a funny video. Once she asked for the name of the book club Paula had invited me to. She never pushed and I never promised anything, but we stayed in touch. My parents were different. The only time I heard from them was when something official needed to be relayed. A message about a distant cousin's wedding. A tax document my dad forwarded from an old joint account I'd forgotten to close. Then just after the 4th of July, I got an invitation from my mother. Dinner. Sunday evening. No location listed. Just the words, "We miss having you at the table." I read it twice before showing it to Rachel. "Are you going?" she asked. "I haven't decided. If you do," she said, "set the terms. All of them." I waited 2 days before replying. "We can meet at a restaurant. Not the house. 2 hours, and if the topic turns back to what happened, I'll leave." They agreed. We met at a quiet steakhouse halfway between my apartment and their neighborhood. I got there 10 minutes early and sat near the window where I could see the parking lot. They arrived together. My mom waved through the glass. My dad looked down as he walked in. The conversation started with surface things: my job, the weather, a cousin's new baby. When the food came, my mother brought up the family reunion that was coming up in October. My dad said nothing. He spent most of the meal picking at his baked potato. No one mentioned Greece. No one said the word emergency fund. It was as if it had all been stored somewhere out of reach, behind a door none of us was willing to open. When the check came, I reached for my wallet. My mother placed her hand on top of mine. "We invited you," she said. "Let us take care of it." I let her. As we walked to our cars, my dad said goodbye without meeting my eye. My mother hugged me quickly, then stepped back. "Let's not wait so long next time," she said. I didn't answer. Over the next few months, we kept in occasional contact. A few texts, a holiday card. They never apologized. But they also didn't bring it up again. Meanwhile, Jessica kept showing up. She told me she was still in therapy, that she'd stopped using her parents' bank accounts and started budgeting with an app I'd once recommended to her back in college. 3 weeks ago, we met for coffee again. Same cafe, different table. This time she looked more settled. "I've been thinking about that day in Santorini," she said. The caption, "The way we cut you out." She paused and pulled a small envelope from her purse. Inside was a printed photo of us as kids sitting side by side on the edge of a dock at a lake we used to visit every summer. "I found it while cleaning Mom's office," she said. "Figured it should be with you." I looked at it for a long time before slipping it into my bag. "You built a life," she said quietly. "You did everything they said we were supposed to do, and I was angry that you didn't need anyone. I didn't say anything right away, just listened. I took your money," she said. "I tried to take your place, and I'm sorry for all of it." This time the apology didn't feel rehearsed. As I drove home that afternoon, I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting on my lap. I wasn't sure what came next between us, but something had shifted. At work, things had changed too. The new role came with more visibility, and with that came new offers. One afternoon, the company president called me into his office. He wanted to discuss a senior-level opening, something with partial ownership and long-term planning responsibilities. "You've proven yourself," he said, "not just in work ethic, but in how you carry yourself through difficulty. That's the kind of leadership we value." I didn't give him an answer right away. I took a weekend to think it over. Then I accepted. Andrew and I had been growing closer, too. We'd started spending weekends together, taking turns cooking meals, walking the lakefront trail, talking about long-term goals. One Saturday evening, while we were cleaning up dinner, he asked if I'd ever consider us living under the same roof. "I'd like that," he said. "But I know you take your time with these things, and that's one of the reasons I love you." I didn't answer right then. I just stood there, hands still damp from the sink, thinking about how different this felt from anything I'd known before. That night I sat on the couch and looked through old documents, not financial ones, but things I'd written to myself over the years. Goals, reflections, reminders. At the bottom of one folder was a list I'd made after the confrontation with my family. It had one sentence at the top: "You do not owe anyone access to your peace." I folded it up and placed it in the back of my new filing cabinet behind my emergency fund ledger and my updated estate documents. The next morning, I called my grandmother. She told me stories from her garden in Arizona and asked how I was sleeping. We talked for almost an hour. Before we hung up, she said, "Your dad was raised to think loyalty was the same thing as love. It's not. You figured that out. That's something to be proud of." As I hung up the phone, I looked around my apartment. Quiet, clean, safe. For the first time in over a year, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. It was almost a full year after that Santorini photo when the final piece of my life finally felt in place. I was standing at the stove in my apartment, stirring a pot of soup for dinner when I heard Andrew come in behind me. He kissed my cheek, asked if I needed help, then started setting the table like he'd done a dozen times before. It was quiet outside, just the hum of traffic down the block and the faint clang of someone dragging out recycling bins. My emergency fund, the one they drained without a word, had finally been rebuilt, plus a little extra. The new promotion helped. So did the shift in how I managed my spending. I'd moved everything to a separate bank, one with stricter protections. Any unusual activity triggered a phone call now. Passwords were encrypted. Alerts came straight to me. But it wasn't just the money that changed. I understood things differently now. The soft spots where trust used to live had hardened into something steadier. I knew what to look for, what crossed a line, what it sounded like when someone asked for access they hadn't earned. My relationship with my parents stayed distant. We exchanged occasional texts, mostly holiday-related. After our dinner at the steakhouse, my mother sent a few messages about family news, nothing personal, just facts. My dad remained mostly silent, offering short replies when absolutely necessary. Jessica, though, kept reaching out. Every few weeks, sometimes more. She told me she'd kept up with therapy, said she was managing her money better. She'd even started her own savings account, small but hers. At our last coffee meeting, she gave me something I didn't expect. Not an excuse, not a justification, a real apology. "I wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice low. "Back then I thought if I could take something from you, it'd make me feel less stuck. You had everything, your job, your apartment, your life." I didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "I'm sorry, Kimberly. I really am." The difference this time was clear. She didn't follow it with a favor. She didn't try to explain it away. She just sat there and let the words land. We walked around the block afterward and didn't talk much, but something between us had shifted. Work was steady. The new leadership role came with more pressure but also more respect. My team grew. I started mentoring junior staff. The company president called me into his office one morning and handed me a letter. "This is where we see you going long term," he said. Inside was an offer, a senior executive position with equity in the firm. He didn't need to convince me. "I accept," I said. Even outside of work, the people in my life had changed. Not in some dramatic way, but in the quiet, dependable kind. Paula's book club became a monthly staple. Tyler's financial wellness group turned into a small network of friends who talked more about life than spreadsheets. Rachel, as always, remained the anchor. She never stopped making space for me, whether it was a last-minute dinner invite or just a walk around the block after a tough day. And her parents still made an extra plate for me at Sunday dinner. Andrew and I had been talking about moving in together, carefully, the way we both liked to handle things. "I want this," he said one night, drying dishes beside me. "But I also want you to take your time." I appreciated that more than I could say. We decided to take the next step at our own pace. We started looking at places with 2 bedrooms, one for us, one as an office, somewhere close to work near a decent coffee shop. Nothing flashy. Around that same time, I visited my grandmother in Arizona. She greeted me at the door with homemade iced tea and a slow, steady hug. We didn't talk about my parents for the first 2 days. On the 3rd day, we sat on her porch while the sun dropped behind the hills. She was quiet for a while, then said, "Your father was raised to believe family loyalty matters more than anything, even when it hurts, even when it's wrong." I didn't respond. "It's not your job to carry that," she added. "Just because they taught it doesn't mean you have to keep it." We watched the sky change color for a long time after that. She gave me a quilt from her linen closet before I left, said it used to be on the guest bed when I was little. I folded it carefully and tucked it into my carry-on. That visit helped me see things more clearly, not in a way that excused what had happened, but in a way that made it easier to understand how it started and why I'd never go back to pretending it was fine. I came home rested, focused, ready for what came next. And what came next started with a text. "Jessica again. Found this while cleaning. Thought you might want it." Attached was a photo, a printed snapshot from a summer long ago. The two of us at the lake house our family used to rent. Our arms were around each other, our legs dangling off the dock. We were barefoot, sunburned, smiling without looking at the camera. I stared at it for a while, then I saved it. Andrew came over later that night. I showed him the picture while he unpacked a bag of groceries. "Do you think you'll ever fully trust them again?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, just looked at the photo one more time before setting it down. "Trust is earned," I said quietly. "I'm open to them earning it back. But I'll never mistake blind faith for love again." He nodded. "Seems healthy to me," he said. I poured us each a glass of water. He set the table. The house smelled like roasted vegetables and warm bread. The windows were open. The evening air felt steady and calm. About 2 weeks after Jessica sent the lake house photo, I got a letter in the mail. Not typed. Handwritten in my mother's careful looping script. Inside was an invitation to Sunday dinner. Nothing formal, just a note that said, "We'd love to have you over soon if you're willing." It didn't mention the past. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a sentence about missing me at the table. I read it twice, then folded it closed and left it on the kitchen counter. Later that evening I told Rachel, "If you go, she said you decide how it happens. Not them." I thought about it overnight. The next day I texted my mom. "We can meet at a restaurant, neutral space, 2 hours, no pressure. I'm not ready for the house," she replied within the hour. "Of course, we'll make a reservation." We met at a small Italian place off the highway, quiet booths, soft lighting a waitress who didn't hover. My dad said little beyond the usual pleasantries. My mom smiled too much and kept fiddling with her silverware. The whole thing lasted an hour and 40 minutes. No drama, no rehashing. When the check came, I covered my half. They didn't object. As I walked to the car, I realized I didn't feel rattled. I wasn't carrying the usual tension in my shoulders, just a kind of stillness, like I'd finally accepted how things were, even if they never became what I once hoped. That sense of clarity carried through the fall. Work picked up new clients, bigger accounts. I started leading weekly team meetings, mentoring younger associates, helping with hiring decisions. I'd never planned on becoming the kind of person people turn to for guidance, but it fit. My promotion came with a stock option offer, too. A few people around the office joked that I was on the path to being partner by 40. I didn't laugh, not because I thought they were wrong, but because I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was building something for myself. At home, things were quieter, but fuller. Andrew and I spent weekends cooking together. We tried new recipes, made grocery lists in pen, and argued once over the proper way to store herbs. He let me be precise, and I let him be playful. It worked. We started talking about combining our finances, but slowly. I wasn't in a rush. He understood. "I'm not here to take anything from you," he said one night while washing dishes. "You don't have to give more than you're ready to." It stayed with me. One Saturday morning I cleaned out the storage closet. Tucked in an old file box was the red folder I'd used during the fraud investigation. All the documents were still inside: bank statements, screenshots, the printout of Jessica's text. I took one last look, then zipped it into an envelope and placed it at the back of my filing cabinet. I didn't need it close anymore. Around Thanksgiving, Jessica texted again. "I'm hosting this year. No pressure. Just wanted you to know you're welcome." I declined, politely. I told her I was spending the day with Rachel's family again, which was true. Rachel's parents made extra cranberry sauce because they remembered I liked it more than stuffing. Her dad asked about work. Her mom slipped me leftovers just in case. It wasn't flashy, but it was enough. Later that weekend, Jessica sent a photo of the table she'd set. It looked nice, simple white plates, cloth napkins, a pie that leaned just a little to one side. "Not perfect," she wrote, "but I did my best." I replied with a heart. Nothing more. December came quickly after that. I kept the holidays low-key, no big plans, just small gatherings, Paula's tree decorating party, a quiet dinner with Andrew's cousins. On Christmas Eve, I lit a candle in the window, something my grandmother used to do. Around that time, Jennifer the attorney called with an update. Banks finalized everything she said. Funds have been returned, no outstanding claims. It's done. I thanked her, then hung up and stared out the window for a long time. There was no satisfaction, no triumph, just closure. And that was enough. Jessica and I met once more before the new year. A coffee shop again this time with soft music playing overhead and a line out the door. She told me she was thinking about moving out of the basement and into a small place on her own. "I'm scared," she said. "But I think it's time." I nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I know this doesn't fix anything," she said, "but I wanted you to have it." Inside was a receipt, a donation she'd made to a local women's financial literacy program. I figured she said it should go towards something that matters. I didn't say anything right away, just placed the envelope in my coat pocket. As we stood to leave, she hugged me. Not long, just enough. When I got home, I placed the envelope in the same drawer as the lake house photo. No labels. Just a small stack of things that used to hurt and now held something quieter. That night, I wrote a list of goals for the year ahead. Nothing grand, just steady things, a new emergency fund target, a weekend trip with Andrew, one afternoon a month with no plans, and a note at the bottom, "You protected yourself. You didn't fold. That matters." Winter passed gently that year, the kind where the snow came in light waves, not storms. I walked more. I read more. I started keeping fresh flowers in the kitchen, just a small vase changed every week. Andrew moved in right after the new year, not all at once. A drawer here, a coat there. By February, his name was on the lease and his toothbrush was next to mine. We never made a big announcement. It just felt like the natural next step. One night, while we were putting away dishes, he asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't checked your bank account that day?" I didn't answer right away. I dried my hands, looked out the window, then said, "I think I'd still be trying to convince myself I mattered to people who didn't see me clearly." He nodded, then turned the lights down like he always did when we were settling in for the evening. That spring, I flew back to Arizona to visit my grandmother again. We sat on her porch every morning sipping coffee as the sun came up over the desert. She didn't ask for updates, just told stories about my dad as a teenager, about the year her garden bloomed twice, about a trip she once took alone to Montana. On my last day there, she gave me a small wooden box. Inside was a ring, simple silver, with a smooth blue stone in the center. "I wore it when I needed reminding," she said, "that I could handle more than I thought I could. I wore it on the flight home." Back in Chicago, life moved forward in steady steps. Jessica and I stayed in occasional contact. Not close, but cordial. The distance helped us be honest. She was learning how to stand on her own. I was learning how to love people without losing myself. My parents remained mostly in the background. I didn't chase them. I didn't close the door either. Some relationships are easier to hold at arm's length, and that was okay. By summer, the agency where I worked offered me a seat on the leadership board. It came with new responsibilities, a new office, and a framed nameplate I didn't ask for but kept anyway. One afternoon, I walked past the conference room where I'd once sat, silently afraid to speak. I paused at the door, looked inside, and saw my team meeting without me, confident, laughing, working together. That moment stayed with me longer than any promotion ever could. It reminded me that resilience isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like consistency, like showing up again after being knocked down, like protecting yourself even when others don't understand why you need to. I still keep that old emergency fund envelope tucked behind a newer one that holds more now. Not just money, but memory. That folder isn't about fear anymore. It's about preparation, intention, strength I didn't know I had. A few weeks ago, I stood in my kitchen, same counter, same sunlight, and realized I hadn't thought about that trip to Greece in months. Not because it stopped mattering, but because it no longer defined me. The woman I was, then hurt, confused, trying to hold everyone together, she got me through the worst of it. But the woman I became afterward, she's the one I live as now. Family isn't just who raised you, it's who respects you, who listens when you say no and doesn't take your silence as permission. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. If you're listening to this and you've had to draw a hard boundary with someone you love just to keep your peace, you're not alone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let people show you who they really are. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it brought something up for you, something you've lived or are still living, feel free to share it in the comments. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. There's more to talk about. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve to feel safe in your own story.